Live with Milkshakes with Michael. Hey, Florence. TGIF is indeed true. Sandra, good to see you. So I wanted to come on here to share our continuation of our series around the mindfulness of the body, which is a cornerstone to the practice of mindfulness. Before I host our meta practice here at the top of the hour, our loving kindness practice, which is a perfect way to end the week. So it's Milkshakes with Michael, so I should share what milkshake I have. To be transparent, I don't have a milkshake. It's a smoothie. In the smoothie, delicious blackberries. I put some sprouts in there. Gotta eat your fiber. More on that to come in an episode of Whole Again, coming coming up probably in the first week of March. So, but this is, my milkshake, quote, unquote. So all right, so last week during our live, we talked about the pushing and the clinging or grasping that we tend to do. This is all in our focus over the last several weeks around this first pillar of mindfulness, the mindfulness of the body, like tuning in. And you hear often that we are nature, right? Connecting with nature, some people talk about getting out into nature, but then someone will correct them and say, well, actually, you don't need to get out into nature. You are nature, you come from nature. And so, as it relates to the mindfulness of the body, there is a connection to the elements. And I have actually, I have five meditations that speak to each one of these elements. I'm going to cover four today. The fifth one is sort of ether, gas. But I'm going to talk about the four main ones. And again, on my app, the Pause, Breathe, Reflect app, which you can download for free, you can get these meditations and really start to tune in more deeply to what you sense in the body, that interoception that we develop with a practice of mindfulness or a practice of yoga. So this really helps us understand who we are, starting with the body. So the first element, when we think about these elements, first element, the wind, right? So first thing that you might think of when you think about the wind as it relates to the body is the breath. So wind is all around movement, expansion, there can be like vibration. So there is the mindfulness of the in breath and the out breath. And it also is addressed as it relates to these elements, namely the wind. The wind can also be muscle movement, right? So it's that motion that we get through the wind. So connecting with that. So again, this is the first, like, call it the first one, at least the first one I'll share with you this morning. Then there's fire, another element, another earth element. So fire, as you might imagine, body temperature. It also relates to metabolism or digestion, right? The metabolism, almost like a furnace in the body. How quickly does it burn the calories that we consume? And hopefully, we're stoking that fire with good, nutritious foods that nourish us. So, fire is around temperature and digestion and sort of transformation, because that's what digestion is. It takes the food that we eat, the things that we drink, and turns them into fuel sources for all of our cells to keep them as healthy as possible. Water is the next one. We are about what, 65%, some say 70% water. So that's another part of our nature. The water within us, of course, you can think of saliva, right? You can think of blood, sweat, like all those elements of the body tie back into our water element. And then the last one I'll share is really just sort of the earth in itself, right? As an element, the groundedness, the dirt. And so that's about feeling grounded. Often, when you practice meditation, the instructor or the teacher will say, bring some awareness to how your feet are planted firmly on the ground. So, in the season that we are living in, where there's so much uncertainty, although life has always been uncertain, we just feel it differently, I think, now because, well, it's our experience with uncertainty, but certainly there's a whole bunch coming at us. And since we're all on our phones and we can doom scroll, I think compared to past generations or past times, we're just exposed to so much more information, so much more uncertainty. So it can feel overwhelming. So in a practice, we often guide in the practice, like come back, notice your feet planted firmly on the ground, feel grounded, be in a position that feels strong, stable, but still alert. So the earth element is about our bones, it's about our muscles, it's about anything, it's about our teeth, even our fingernails, anything that can give us some structure. The skin is also part of the earth element. Anything that can give us groundedness, stability, and connectedness. That all ties back to the earth. So, as you see, as we dive deeper into our knowledge of mindfulness of the body, it ties back into the fact that we are nature. How cool is that? And so, I'm not sure about you, but I've never met anyone who has gone out into nature or connected with their nature and doesn't feel rejuvenated or renewed in doing so. Of course, sometimes we go out and there's storms that might be a little bit different, but when we go out into nature and really try to connect with these elements of wind, of fire, of water, of the earth, it can really help um, bring a greater, I would say, greater awareness to our overall practice. So So we'll continue on this, like bringing these themes through as we go throughout the year. But my overall recommendation is like make sure we don't lose this. You know, I encourage you to like stay in this thought process, this awareness process of being mindful of what's happening in the body. The next, uh, I guess, pillar, if you will, of mindfulness is the mindfulness of feeling tones. And so I've shared since my big accident back in 2001 that everything is neutral until you label it. From Buddha's perspective, he might not necessarily agree with that as it relates to feeling tones, mindfulness of feeling tones. There's pleasant, there's unpleasant, and then there's also neutrality. And my feeling is that even before you get to those labels, it's still neutral. And so I've had some debates with some of my meditation teachers on this, and we can all have our perspective, right? So in the body, we will have feeling tones, sensations, and we'll be quick to label them as positive or pleasant or unpleasant or unwanted, and then neutral. So as you go forward, as you travel, through the next few weeks, I'll encourage you to, as we start to dive into this pillar, I would encourage you to become aware of how you label some of the things that you feel in the body. Obviously, when we're feeling a bit of pain, we can label it as like, that's unpleasant. And then we start to push away against it. Or there might be a really pleasant sensation and we want to grab onto it because we don't want to lose it. We're feeling strong, but as we know, everything's changing in every moment. In fact, we're slightly different right now than when I began this Substack Live. So this is the next phase as we head into March, this understanding of how do we label our feeling tones? What's our relationship to what we sense? Once if we have a reactive way of labeling things, that sets up a story, and then the stories do shape our lives. So, what we can do through our practice is have more neutrality, if you will, or give it a beat or two before we label something. The goal isn't to make everything pleasant. The goal is to be able to accept all that we're feeling and be in a relationship with it, knowing that all these sensations will eventually change and we don't need to push against any of them or grasp or cling to any of them. We can let them flow. So that's a little bit of that middle way, if you will. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone today. Next week I'll be away, so I won't be doing a live practice. The following week is International Women's Day as we head into March. A little plug here, my book, The Five Levels of Male Allyship. On International Women's Day, there'll be plenty of men who will post things here on Substack and other social platforms around support for women. And I think that's going to be great. But what we're encouraging people to do through the book is to understand their primary level of allyship and work hard to be more of a champion, which that person, that type of ally is always advocating for other people, not just on special days like International Women's Day. Constant, it's a constant push for greater inclusion, greater belonging, greater understanding. And so during the month of March, I will be encouraging us to do more of that as we move forward. So thanks for joining today. This is a shorter one than some of the past ones I've done here on Substack, but we'll be back during the first week of March for another Milkshakes with Michael. And as we dive into more of this thing called mindfulness in our practice, so we can weave it into our lives and make it just the way we live. So with that, thanks for joining. I'm going to go back to my milkshake before the meditation here at noon. And until next time, have fun storming the castle. I appreciate you. Love you all. Be well. Bye bye.